Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Smart Company webinar for today. Our topic is 10 better ways to frame your pricing. I'm Cara Waters. I'm the Deputy Editor here at Smart Company and I'll be taking your questions today. And I'm talking to Jon Manning, who's the founder and managing director of PricingProphets.com. We've got Jon in the Smart Company offices with us today. Welcome, Jon.
Thanks, Cara.
So the key thing about a webinar is that you can participate. The main way to do so is by listening. Audio will automatically be streamed through your computer speakers. You can also participate via Twitter. The hashtag for today is #BVPricing, and you can use that hashtag during the webinar today and also afterwards, because Business Victoria will be following up on any questions you have following the seminar. But key to today's success is going to be for everyone online asking questions via the questions pane. That's the best way to get a direct response from Jon to exactly what you have on your mind. So type in your questions in the space at the bottom, click on send, and then when there's any sort of gap, or appropriate time, I'll put those questions to Jon and I'll try to get through as many as I can. So don't fret if your question isn't answered straight away, because I will really try to get to them all if possible. And don't worry too much about frantically scribbling down notes, because everyone will be emailed a link to the webinar recording and a copy of the slides tomorrow. So you'll have a great record of everything that we've discussed today. Finally, I'd just like to thank our partners for today's webinar, Business Victoria. As I said, Business Victoria is going to be manning the Twitter hashtag to answer any further questions you have on the topic, and they've been a great support to helping us get such a great host, Jon Manning from Pricing Profits, to talk to us about 10 better ways to frame your pricing. So I'll hand things over to Jon now.
Thank you, Cara. Okay, my screen should be up, so let's kick it off. I'm going to talk about three things in today's webinar. The first thing is why pricing is getting really scary. The second thing is why pricing is so important, and in light of those two topics, 10 ways that you can potentially better frame your pricing. So let's start off with why pricing's getting scary. I've got 10 reasons why I think this is the case. The first is that your customers have never had more power than they have today, and we'll see more of this shortly. There's now an entire generation for whom the internet's always existed. In fact, they own the Web 2.0 movement, the internet of social media, user-generated content, and ratings and reviews. And those customers have used the internet to learn more about marketers than marketers have learned about customers. But having said that, this is slowly, very slowly starting to change, and smart marketers are starting to address this imbalance. Reason number 9, in Australia, about 5% of retailing is now conducted online. In the US, it's close to 10%, and in the UK, it's fast approaching 20%. On top of that, 70% of all purchasing decisions are researched online, and that includes researching the price. And this process is so easy, you just log on to a price comparison website like Price Grabber here, and you find what you're looking for. And price is the most quantifiable attribute of your product. It's what the customer is going to part with to acquire the product from you. And if you appear uncompetitive on price and a price comparison website, you may not even get a look in. There was a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal last month talking about internet retailers, particularly on Amazon, and them deliberately maintaining the lowest price, even if it's by a cent, just so they show up at the top of price comparison searches. And some of these retailers are using software that enables them to change prices every 15 minutes, and a software company that provides this platform boasts of being able to change prices for 2 million of their customers' products every hour. As the numbers I just mentioned suggest, there is still a lot of customers shopping in stores, but that doesn't mean you can just rest on your laurels if you're a bricks and mortar retailer. Most of those customers walking around your shop floor have got smartphones in their pockets, and there's an increasing likelihood that they're going to pull out that smartphone, scan the barcode with one of these apps and walk out of your store to buy the product cheaper online. Reason number 7, we all know customers don't like price increases, but they're not going to tell you that anymore. They're going to tell everybody they know on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and a range of other social media platforms. You only have to look at what happened to Netflix in the northern summer of 2011. Within a week of changing their pricing, they had 82,000 hostile comments on their Facebook page. Reason number 6, there are all sorts of companies out and retailers out there with price guarantees. We'll match the competitor's price, we'll beat the competitor's price, we're never knowingly undersold, just to name a few. And all the people on the webinar in Australia are probably familiar with Bunnings' position on this. As we know, most of these price guarantees have pretty low redemption rates because it's a complicated transaction. The customer has to do a lot of searching, toing and froing to claim their money back. This site, Iona.com, monitors what it calls your shopping hangover. You simply scan your purchase receipt, and if the purchase you've made goes on sale shortly thereafter, they will chase down the refund of the difference for you. That could potentially change those redemption rates if this sort of service comes to Australia. Reason number 5, nobody's perfect, including people responsible for pricing. In 2005, Expedia advertised hotel rooms at the Hiltons in Osaka and Tokyo for $2 or $4 a night. One guest booked a room at the Tokyo Hilton for a year, and why wouldn't you? It'd be cheaper than living at home. This is a German website which doesn't exist anymore, but that's not to say another one of its kind is going to pop up sometime in the future. This site would deliberately crawl the web for your pricing mistakes, like the one I've just described, and then alert its subscriber base to the deal, if you could call it that. So be careful and err at your peril. Reason number 4, some of you may be using competitive pricing strategies where you just outsource your pricing to your competition and charge what they charge. Handsup.cn is a Chinese website which actually goes one step further. It lets customers recommend the products they want to buy as well as allowing them to name their price. This may scare some traditional and conservative retailers, but it sounds like a great product development and pricing research platform to me. Reason number 3, I've spoken a lot about B2C markets and retailing and so forth, and professional service providers need to be scared as well. Customers don't want to buy your time, especially when it's billed in 6-minute intervals. And you only have to look at a big article in The Australian last Friday to get a feel for how much pushback there is for the billable hour. People want to buy a solution to their problem, whether it's a tax return, the conveyance of a house, or some architectural drawings. And as that article in The Australian mentioned, there are so many alternative pricing models available to professional services companies, and the benefits will accrue to the early adopters of those pricing models. On B2B, a bit more, you guys should be pretty scared as well. As in B2C markets, your customers know exactly what they want. They know your products and services are fit for purpose, your brand is strong, your aftermarket sales and support is second to none, but they still just want you to respond to their RFQ, their tender, their auction, and we all know they are about one thing and one thing only, your price. And why do customers know exactly what they want? Well, that's the number one reason I think people should be scared, particularly in B2B markets. The little kid in red shorts here is pricing, and you know who he's wrestling with? The procurement department of your customer. I ask people who attend my pricing workshop if their company has a pricing department and a procurement department. About 20% of delegates say they have a pricing department, but 80 to 100% of delegates work at a company with a procurement department. This means that companies are more interested in the price they pay for goods and services than the price they get for their own goods and services. And until you realise how to deal with procurement managers, you and your pricing is just going to get beaten to a pulp, potentially. So with that in mind, why is pricing so important? Well, in case you haven't realised from the previous 10 slides, price is important to customers, so it should be important to you. These two graphs illustrate the importance of pricing. The one on the left is American research, the one on the right is Canadian research. It's been repeated time and time again, and the results are similar every time it's done. If you can improve your fixed costs by 1%, that's a decrease in fixed costs, it will generally give you an improvement in operating profit of about 2.3%. If you can improve your volumes, the quantity of product you sell, by 1%, you'll increase your operating profit by about 3.6%. 1% improvement in variable costs, about 7.8 to 8.7% improvement in operating profit. But pricing is the most powerful lever you've got, and a 1% improvement in price can increase your operating profit by 11 to 12% in some cases.
John, just to interrupt there, we've just had a question from Angela on the previous slide about billable hours, and she says, do you think there's still a pushback on billable hours for freelancers?
I keep hearing there is, yes. Quite a few freelancers are sort of bouncing that idea off me. And again, stop trying to price by input, which is the hours you put in. Look at pricing by output, fixed prices, and I'll also touch on another one on the very last slide, which is a pricing at a guaranteed maximum, so it's never going to be more than a particular price.
Okay, thanks, John.
Okay, so just continuing on why pricing is so important, here you see a range of industries and the estimated impact on operating profit of a 1% improvement in price. And the quotes on the right actually really drive this home as well. So if everyone shopping at Kroger, the US retail food chain, spent $101 instead of $100, they've estimated their net profit would triple. It's a double-edged sword though. For Coca-Cola, a 1% reduction in price translates to a $20 million loss in operating profits. And for Continental Airlines, in 2001, they carried 44 million passengers at an average fare of $193 and did not make a profit. They would have broken even with an average fare of $195, and that's a difference of 1.04%.
Okay, another question here. Yalkin, I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name correctly there, Yalkin, wants to know what is improvement in price? How do you quantify an improvement in price? I can understand improvement in fixed and variable costs, but improving price, do you mean reducing price or increasing it?
It depends. It can. It's generally an increase. And the best way to get a price increase through is to complement it with an increase in value as well. But it can also mean improving your profitability by actually extracting some of those costs from your cost structure and so forth, which will also flow straight through to the bottom line. But generally, it's optimizing your price that by increasing prices, by better segmentation and better product offerings and better price points to meet customers' needs.
Okay, and we also have Moya, who wants to know, how do you compete on price as a consultant when the offerings are often apples and pears? How do you get past procurement dollars, the procurement dollars focus, and get clients to think of value?
That is a question I'd like to park, and if Moya's still got the question at the end of the presentation, she can raise it again, but I think she'll find that's answered later on.
All will be revealed.
All already revealed, yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, John.
Okay, so I'd like to talk about Apple for a minute. So on this chart here, you can actually see that 2% of the purchase decision when buying an Apple PC is associated with price. Conversely, that means 98% of the purchase decision when buying an Apple PC is not associated with price. It's associated with features, brands, and other attributes. Unlike many of the other companies shown here, Apple's done a fantastic job of desensitizing customers to price and sensitizing them to things like brand and features, which we can collectively call value. Most companies don't know what their pricing alternatives are. In fact, by some estimates, 70 to 80% of companies resort to cost-plus pricing, which is pretty much a flawed pricing model because customers don't care what your costs are. They care what value they receive. So maybe it's time to actually spin the wheel of fortune and see if there's a pricing model that gives you a better prize. This slide shows how many alternative pricing models, strategies and tactics are out there. And these are terms I use a bit interchangeably here because one company's pricing model is another company's pricing tactic. And obviously it'll take a month of Sundays to actually go through each and every one of these categories of pricing models. But so I'll just briefly go around the wheel here. At the top, sort of 1230-ish, you've got traditional pricing models of cost plus, letting the market or the competition set prices, non-linear or two-part pricing like the utilities use, and then dynamic pricing and revenue or yield management like the airlines and hotels you use. The value-based approach can be executed using models called customer value analysis or economic value analysis, and we'll talk more about value in the webinar today as well. Time is a fantastic tool for pricing, and you can use time very effectively. Software, there are a range of pricing models in software from usage, time and location based. As I've sort of already mentioned before, legal and professional services can be priced by inputs, the hours that are worked and so forth, but a better approach is to price by outputs and deliverables and so forth, and there are hybrids between that. With so much business moving online, there's a lot of digital advertising models because a lot of websites are cross-subsidized by advertisers, and we're moving into the fourth generation of online pricing models now with cost per action type transactions. Other digital pricing models include freemium, pay what you want. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on, and then the direct and indirect cross-subsidy models. And there's a whole range of miscellaneous pricing models, including the paired products, your razors and your blades, unbundling, pay-as-you-go. There's some fantastic gimmick pricing models, doctors in China only getting paid when you're healthy because when you're sick they're not doing their job. A hotel in Germany that actually charges for rooms by the guest's weight. And then right up the top you've got a range of auctions, which are another category of pricing models as well. One of the great pricing orators of our time is this man, who I'm sure many people recognize, Warren Buffett. I'm sure a lot of people have heard the top quote there, price is what you pay, value is what you get. But during an interview with the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission in 2011, he gave us two more pearls of wisdom. If you have to have a prayer session before raising prices, then you've got a terrible business. And the single most important decision in evaluating a business is pricing power. That's a really interesting couple of words, pricing power. What does it mean? One of the definitions I like is the ability to get the price you deserve for the value you provide. There's a graphic here which sort of helps you identify where pricing power resides. On one axis you've got necessity at one end and discretionary at the other end, and you've got the other axis of unique and commodities. And it's very easy to see what type of products and services tend to have pricing power. With pricing getting scary and the importance of pricing now sort of firmly understood, here's 10 ideas in no particular order on how you can better frame your pricing. Firstly, don't overcomplicate your pricing. Make your products easy to buy by avoiding complexity and algorithms or formulas like this. Use them if you have to, but use them in the back end. Don't burden customers with them. I often call Apple iTunes pricing why not pricing. You hear a song on the radio and you want it on your iPod or your iPhone, you go onto the iTunes store, it's $1.99. Why not? And pricing is increasingly transferable from one industry to another, so why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to? Learn from the mistakes that somebody else has made. If your customers are often airline passengers, they'll understand airline-style revenue management and dynamic pricing. And you'll see that moving through American sporting clubs and sporting games at the moment as more and more sporting clubs in America are moving to dynamic pricing. Airlines themselves have taken the humble pub happy hour and sold distressed inventory online during lunch hours. And Google AdWords style pay-per-performance pricing is now actually moving into drugs and pharmaceuticals, particularly in the UK. Number 9, don't frame your prices around costs. This has got to be rule number 1 when it comes to pricing. Customers don't care about what your costs are. They care about the value they receive. And if the only thing your customers care about is price, then perhaps you haven't given them anything else to care about. So as I mentioned before, about 70 to 80% of companies resort to cost-plus pricing, working out the cost, adding on a margin and hoping for the best. I've got a little story about this that happened to me recently. I bought some stickers for the back of my windscreen which were about 150mm high and 600mm wide, and they read, "Are you pricing right? Ask PricingProphets.com." The printer charged me $44 including GST, which I thought was an absolute bargain. Why? Because I actually wasn't buying a sticker. I was actually buying an advertising solution to stick on the back of my car, which I thought would last about 2 years. But he wasn't selling me an advertising product. He was selling me a sticker for my car, and he was probably just pricing it on cost plus and not thinking at all about what value I would receive from the sticker. So instead of talking about costs, you need to actually talk about value. And one of the ways to talk about value is a value proposition, and you hear a lot of talk about value propositions. A meaningful value proposition has 3 hallmarks. You tell customers what value the product you provide gives to them, what problem it solves, what job it does, how it can increase your customers' revenue, reduce their cost or minimize their risk. You then quantify the magnitude of the value provided. So what financial value is there from that revenue uplift, the cost reduction, the risk minimization, using averages if you have to. And then thirdly, illustrate how the value is superior to that of the competition. Why is it better? And the critical test here is, can your competitor put their name in your value proposition and use it as their own? And they shouldn't be able to do that. And this often leads to companies producing tools that calculate the value for sales reps. Sometimes they're spreadsheets, sometimes they're web pages, sometimes they're tablet apps. And once you can quantify the value you deliver, you share that revenue uplift or cost reduction with your customers via your pricing. Now there's an oxymoron with value-based pricing because value is in the eyes of the beholder. Customers will determine if you provide value when they use or consume your product or service. So what you actually need to do is channel them in the direction of what you think the value is that you provide in terms of the benefits. And increasingly that means 3 things. Knowing which benefits your product or service provides to your customers, knowing how important the benefits are to your customers, and in this particular case you start with the most important, which may be adhesion, and then knowing how superior or potentially inferior your product or service is compared to your competition. Now this may sound like a lot of work, but you know what? If you're pitching to a procurement or a purchasing manager, they're going to do this amount of work on you and possibly more. And I'll talk again about that shortly. So once you do understand your value that you provide to your customers, try and link it to a customer's value metric. What do I mean by that? The easiest way to illustrate this is with a couple of projects that we've done for clients on Pricing Profits. The first one was an executive mental health check service. Now the cost of mental health issues to the Australian economy has been very well quantified, and with the early diagnosis that this service offers, such costs can be avoided. It therefore makes sense to link the pricing of this service to the salary of the C-suite, which is information publicly available in annual reports of the target market. And in general, which direction do C-suite salaries tend to go? Upwards. The second example was really interesting as well. We did a project for an Indian SMS text messaging service, and we were asked to validate their pricing. It was being sold on a subscription basis to safety-conscious parents of school children who would get a text message informing them that little Rohit had arrived safely at school. Our experts suggested an alternative approach though. The service should be sold to schools and not parents, because the schools were the company's channel to market. But on top of that, it actually made them look good. It improved their value proposition by telling parents that they were concerned about child safety. And on top of that, they also recommended pricing it as a percentage of the school fees. And again, there's only one way that private school fees go, and that's up.
Okay, John, I've just got a few more questions for you there.
Sure.
You may have just already answered this one, but Amar wanted an example for quantification of value.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was just talking about. The first example I gave there was quantifying costs that can be avoided, and the second example there, you can actually link to revenue improvement. So what you need to look for is an opportunity to increase a customer's revenue, reduce their costs, or minimise their risks.
Okay, great. And another question from Nancy. This is a bit of a detailed one. It's in relation to the consulting professional services industry. And she said, usually government RFQs require detailed cost structures in their tenders. It's been evident that the contracts lend more favourably to hourly cost methods rather than fixed price methods. How can you be competitive in your hourly rate? Demonstrating hours across activities does not allow you to cost plus to cover overheads and add in value. How do you get around this and demonstrate this in your written quotation? Is there an industry standing consulting rate? I know it's difficult in consulting because there's a big range.
Very tough question. Yeah. We will touch on some of that a bit later on, and it's not an easy question to answer given you know, the different approaches to tendering and so forth that various places use. Think about blended rates. Think about a guaranteed maximum price, fixed price services, and so forth. And you can, at some point, you actually ask yourself, do I actually want these guys as a customer? It's not a nice question to have to ask, but if all your customers care about is price, they're just going to beat you down on price. Look at greater, differentiating yourself. What value do you provide? How do you stand out from the others, and so forth? And hopefully some of the discussion in the rest of the webinar will talk to some of these issues as well.
Great, thanks, John.
Was that it?
Yes.
Okay, for the time being.
Yeah,
okay.
Keep them coming through, people.
Okay, so number 5, do you really want half price? There are only 2 words you need to keep in mind when it comes to discounting: give and get. If you're going to give someone a discount, let them have a cheaper price, get something in return. This photo illustrates the theory magnificently, but not the practicality. If you want it for half price, give half the product. Remember, there is no bank in the world that accepts a deposit of market share, of page views, or unique visitors. Yes, you can buy market share at the expense of revenue, profit or both, but discounting heavily won't pay the bills. Give discounts where discounts are due and get something in return, be it customer loyalty, larger volumes, new or repeat customers or buyers of distressed inventory. And make discounts time-banded and their timing unpredictable, which is something that quite a few Australian retailers don't really adhere to. As I sort of mentioned there, some retailers have sales so frequently you can set your watch by them, and I'm not just talking about Boxing Day sales. A couple of years ago, BRW published a calendar for the year which showed that general retailers would most likely be discounting inventory for all but 3 months of the year. And it really shouldn't be journalists being the ones that determine or condition retailers or customers as to when or when they will not have their sales. My friend Mr. Toscana here doesn't fall into that category. It's unlikely that a few of his customers, never mind journalists, would have picked the start of his expensive divorce sale, but perhaps most importantly, he's not conditioning his customers to when his next sale is going to be. Is it going to be when he remarries, his next divorce, some other event? Unlike some retailers who I mentioned, you can guarantee they're going to be on sale sometime in the next 6 weeks, and customers just delay their purchase.
Yeah, that's interesting, John. I know that we've looked this year at I think both Myers and David Jones have been trying to cut back on the number of sales they have, and because there does seem to be a constant discounting cycle that customers just say, well, I'll just wait for it to be on sale.
Absolutely. And there's an even bigger example, which is JCPenney in the US, who in 2011, I think, had the equivalent of 2 sales a day across their 1,100 stores across the US. It was just, getting out of control almost. Okay, so number 3, have a think about selling goods as a service. So Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney and the like, they used to sell aircraft engines to airlines. They now rent them out to airlines on power-by-the-hour contracts. The goods now being sold as a service to the airline, and the airline's only paying for the service when the airline is earning revenue from that aircraft, that is when it's up in the air. Orica have also been very successful with this. They've stopped selling dynamite and they sell a rock removal service. This is a great cash flow friendly pricing model as well. Rather than get a revenue in a lump sum, you turn it actually into an annuity or an ongoing revenue stream. And in one of my early leading company articles, I talked about how artists could do this. So rather than selling their artwork, they could rent it out as corporate boardroom artwork.
Michael's just added in a comment on that last point. He says, don't forget Kmart, who have a policy of no sales and everyday cheap prices. Their result has been impressive.
Yeah. Number 2, understand behavioural economics. So the difference between what customers rationally say they will do and what they irrationally do is now becoming very mainstream thanks to behavioural economics and a couple of rock star behavioural economists, people like Dan Ariely and so forth. Behavioural economics is a series of heuristics or behaviours which you can apply to better pricing products and services, acquiring customers, generating more sales, or segmenting your market better, just to name a few. We probably haven't got the time to discuss all the heuristics in the time we've got available to us, but I'd strongly recommend checking out Bree Williams's column on Smart Company every Monday, which is on behavioural economics. But what I thought it might be useful to do is have a quick look at this website, which has got a bit of press in the last week or two. It's called The Humble Bumble. And it's really a pricing and behavioural economics playground. It's a site that sells bundles of electronic products, and at the moment it's selling a bundle of ebooks. They are pricing on a pay-what-you-want basis, so they have no prices. You pay what you want. Economists might call that voluntary price discrimination. You can come back later on and pay more if you think the bundle's worth more than what you paid for it. When you specify how much you pay, you can specify how much goes to the author or the developer, how much goes to a charity that they support, and how much goes to the website. There's a leaderboard telling you who's paid the most. You get bonus products if you pay above the current average price, and that actually drives the average price higher and higher. There's an average price by the type of operating system that the visitors to the site are using. There's a countdown clock telling you how much longer the bundle's available for to create a sense of urgency. For this latest ebook bundle, there's also leaderboards by cities and by regions of the world. There's instant feedback creating a sense of community on the site, and there's no digital rights management on the product sold, making it appealing to the widest possible market. According to press reports, this current book bundle has generated $5 million in its first week, and the site's generated $23 million in payments since it's launched. Fantastic little website, great pricing and behavioural economics experiments, and if there's listeners on the webinar for working for not-for-profits or charities, I'd really strongly recommend you have a look at it.
Yeah, that's a great example there, John. I've got a few more questions for you. Richard wants to know, if you discount, don't you just compete against a different market segment?
If you can win a customer on price, you can lose a customer on price. So yes, you may be going into different segments. You may also be going into a non-loyal customer base. Absolutely.
Okay, and Mark wants to know if you have any methods on changing price structures or methods with customers.
Absolutely. So I've done this with a couple of clients. One in particular who started a business with a pay-as-you-go model, which meant she was earning revenue when her asset was being utilised, but when it was sitting around not being utilised, she was still racking up expenses and so forth, and not necessarily covering them very well. We had to change from a pay-as-you-go model to a subscription model. We understood who all the customers were, and we devised a communication strategy for each of those particular segments. For the consumer segment, it involved sending an email to people, and for the business segment, it actually involved a face-to-face visit. It was explained to them why the price change was being made, the pricing model change, why they had to do it, when they were doing it, so on and so forth. It was not a money grab. It was actually to make the business more healthy, and both the email conversation and the face-to-face conversation finished with the comment that they would understand if they took their business elsewhere because of the price change. That company, 12 months later, had not lost one single customer, and its revenue was up 20%. So the short answer to that is just be true to your word and execution, execution, execution.
Okay, great. And one final one for this slide. Why is online often seen as the cheap price as opposed to bricks and mortar? That's from Rick.
It's a very good question. I think that there are perceptions that you don't have to rent real estate. You don't have to employ people and so forth. So the price should be cheaper. And even if you look, one of the real obvious examples that sticks out is banking. The cost of a transaction at a teller is quite expensive. Over the phone, it's cheaper. Internet, it's cheaper still. You take less and less of the overheads out, and increasingly customers expect that to be reflected in the price.
Great, thanks, John.
Okay, so the last point I want to make is, if you're negotiating with a pit bull, play the peacekeeper. Imagine you're negotiating a huge contract. It's worth millions of dollars, and the customer is just inches away from signing, but all of a sudden the head of procurement of the company you're negotiating with enters the room and says they need another 10% off in cost savings from your price, or the deal's off. Furthermore, she starts shouting and bullying, part of a sledgehammer approach to an adversarial negotiation for a single transaction. She wants to screw you into the ground and take all of that 10% cost reduction and rob you of any profit you want to make on the deal. To her, profit isn't good, it's dysfunctional behaviour. She insists on what's called open book costing to mercilessly drive down your costs, and your pricing, according to her, is cost plus or time and materials, and she doesn't want to bear any unnecessary overhead costs, probing you on what your overhead allocation methodology is so she can get cheaper prices. What's likely to happen when you're faced with this sort of approach is you're going to try and hide more costs. You're not going to put your best people on this project, and you're certainly going to lose interest in the customer very quickly. But the key to this sort of scenario is to frame yourself as the price keeper. Propose a collaborative workshop, the objective of which is to find and share that 10% cost saving. Maybe there's more, which allows you to continue making a profit. The profit incentive remains and margins will remain healthy, resulting in predictable behaviour by both parties. The relationship's open and transparent, and both parties work through the open book costing exercise. Cost reduction opportunities can also be shared and identified. The relationship-based approach focuses on the total cost of ownership and lifetime customer value, and the teams recognise that there are alternatives to cost plus and time and material pricing, such as guaranteed maximum prices. It's a bit like the 1988 movie Sliding Doors, where there's two plots that play out between the leads, Gwyneth Paltrow and John Hannah, depending on whether Gwyneth takes one London Underground train or another. And you can read more about this in my leading company post on Thursday. And with that, we can throw the microphone over to you, Cara, and answer a few more questions.
Great. We've got quite a few coming through, and please do keep on sending them. So now is the time. And I did love that reference to Sliding Doors, John. Good to get a Gwyneth Paltrow movie into a pricing webinar. I'm impressed.
Absolutely.
Okay, so a question from Debbie. She wants to know, what's the best way to price a business-to-consumer product when we give great service but your added value is still waiting for developers to finish what you need? It may take a few months. She does hosiery, which isn't a huge summer product, and it's getting close to summer.
So what was the question again?
What's the best way to price a business-to-consumer product? She says, we give great service, but our added value is still waiting for developers to finish what you need.
Oh, trick question. My preference is to monetize the additional value as it comes online, because if you try and monetize the additional value before it's there, there's a risk, the added value falls over, or you start providing sort of false economy and so forth. So my preference is to actually monetize as the value add comes online, but that should not stop you communicating that that value is in the pipeline, that it's coming, and conditioning customers for that. And maybe there's some sort of early incentive or rewards for early adopters who actually say, yes, I'm actually going to buy this when it becomes available and so forth. And that's, then you know that you're providing value, and you hopefully are going to have a successful product if you've got interest in it before launch.
Okay, well, I hope that answers the question and that I've expressed it in the right way there, Debbie. Now I have a question from Shiam, who says, we often hear the strengths of the freemium model for online services. What's your experience in that, John?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So on the latest figures I've seen is that on average freemium sites are monetizing under 5% of their customers, and potentially it's around about 2.5%. It's a really interesting question. It's obviously a great way to actually build traffic and customers and so forth. I think the key is to actually understand the value that you provide and to version your products accordingly. So don't give away too much value in the free version. Make sure all the value is in the paid version. There's really no right or wrong answer to that. It's industry specific. But if some of your customers will pay for a product or service? Why isn't it that all the others won't pay for it? And there's a great example of this. Many years ago, Bebo, the social networking site, was making $10,000 a month, and they actually decided to start charging for cards, e-cards, birthday cards, Christmas cards, and so forth. Their revenue went from $10,000 a month to $10,000 a day because people highly valued the e-card functionality. So I think the critical thing is talk to your customers, and that applies to any industry that you're involved in pricing with. Talk to your customers, understand what value you provide and so forth, and structure the versions of your products or your product ladders around those differences in value across customer segments.
Okay, great. Although Bebo has really, after that perhaps high with their e-cards, seems to have gone downhill since then, and Facebook seems to have taken over where they left off.
Yes,
although Facebook hasn't really got its pricing worked out, so maybe it does need to, maybe we need to get Mark on board with the Smart Company webinar on pricing. But anyway, another question from Chris this time. He says, if you can win a customer by price and lose one by price, then why should we be focusing on price when you'll eventually see your customer go? Shouldn't we be focusing on other things that customers value rather than price?
Absolutely, and you need to monetize that value through your pricing. So the point there really is that you can compete in the pricing space, or you can compete in the value space and so forth. And I just sort of think back to Apple, the discussion around Apple. You know, loyal customer base because they've got fantastic product, sexy brand, and so forth. And they're hitting a really good market, and one of the most valuable companies in the world. But if you want to play at in the pricing game at the bottom end of the market, there's not a lot of loyalty there with customers. You don't see Tiger Airlines with a loyalty program.
That's true. Very true. Okay. And now we have Linda, who wants to know, can you give advice on pricing luxury items in the current market? So we've gone from low pricing to luxury
the top end of the market. That's a very good question. In the I guess there's a few things to keep in mind with luxury products. Certainly be very careful with your choice of price point. So you actually don't end prices in 99 cents or $99 and things like that. You need to be careful with advertising and so forth. In fact, sometimes you actually don't advertise prices at all. I have an ad for a Mercedes-Benz car which has a price in it, and it looks really funny because there's that old adage from Rolls-Royce: if you have to ask about the price, then you can't afford it. It's just really about understanding who your customers are, who the buyers are, and what appeals to them and so forth. Look at other industries, look at what Rolls-Royce do, look at what cosmetic companies are doing, and we all know they sell hope rather than cosmetics and things like that. Price points, be careful with promotions and stuff like that. Some of those products you can also put prices up and you'll actually see no change in demand, particularly conspicuous consumption. You can put the price of yachts up and people buy more because there's more sort of prestige associated with them. So a few things there hopefully she can think about.
Okay, and just another question that you really just did touch on briefly then, speaking about the $9.95, etc. So Asanka wants to know, what's the reason for pricing at $19.90 instead of $20? How long has this been around?
So I can tell you exactly how long that's been around. So the Bon Marché department store in Paris
Oh, I've been there. It's a good store.
Yeah, so in the 1860s they made two huge changes, and they were the first department store to do this. The first change they made was they actually bought the inventory of goods out from behind counters and put them on tables so people could inspect the goods. And the second thing they did was they put price tags on goods, because obviously, you know, consumers could handle them, and the question they were going to ask was, what price was it going to be? And it is thought that the 99 or the 95 price point actually emerged at that time, because people would then take the item to the cash register, and in those days, instead of handing over a 10 franc note, which the cashier could actually just slip in their pocket, they had to actually open the till and give the customer change, so it became an ordered function. And on top of that is how I believe that sort of pricing practice came around. But then on top of that, you've got the perception that $9.99 is cheaper than $10 and things like that. So that's where that came from.
Okay, and that's quite interesting actually, because bon marché, I think in French, is good, means good price, but it's actually a very expensive department store now. So
yes,
maybe
yes.
it's changed a little bit along the way.
Yeah.
But I'm sure appropriately priced for its customer base.
Exactly.
Okay, another bit of a specific question here for you, John. It's from Rebecca. She says, we're a residential construction company in Sydney who's been in the market for about 3 years. We have difficulty demonstrating value that clients understand, and they end up evaluating on price. Any suggestions for pricing in this kind of competitive market on expensive items for individuals?
Construction company. That is a notoriously difficult industry for pricing.
Lucky Rebecca.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think one of the key things there is to understand who all the people are in a purchasing decision. So you'll have the people that write the check. You'll have influencers. You're probably dealing with engineers and architects and so forth. Understand the role that they play and what's important to them, and you should find that there's a bit of a chain. You know, architects will want sexy buildings and so forth. Engineers will want structural integrity and so on and so forth. So work out exactly what they want and pitch according to those interests and so forth. I think the traditional construction model is to price as cheap as you possibly can and make all your money on change orders and things like that. Have a think about sort of, you know, guaranteed maximum prices and things like that, and just illustrate your value proposition and how you're so much better than the competition.
Okay, great. We've got a question from Kim. She says, can I please, or he, sorry, I'm not sure which gender Kim this is. Can I please ask your thoughts on offering a more cost-effective service? For example, offering a lesser fee for a service if the business specialises in a particular professional service.
Absolutely. So I am all for having a product ladder. So you know, have a mass market product and have a scaled back product. So for the price conscious buyer, and then have a premium product for the you know, the value conscious buyer. So absolutely, it's all about market segmentation and aligning your products or your services to the different needs of those market segments.
Okay, I've got a question from Wes, looking at the fixed pricing instead of hourly rate again. Wes says, I've had some success using fixed pricing in a professional service context, but the challenge is recouping a fee when the client continually triggers more than the agreed level of work. How do clients generally prefer to pay for that extra, or do they expect it for nothing?
Some will try that on you, no doubt about that. So I think that it's all about being really clear up front on what you will do and what you don't do. It also depends on your relationship with the customer. So if it is the first time that you have worked with a particular client, you may actually absorb some of that that additional work or that scope creep and so forth. But if it's a standing customer and so forth, then they may sort of try and pull the wool over your eyes, if you like. It also depends on your relationship with the customer and who else. If you stopped working on the project, you know, could somebody else pick it up and continue with it? I think it's also important to understand that there are a lot of poker players out there, so you actually can't. You need to make a call on whether they're bluffing or, you know, whether they're serious and so forth. So believe it or not, I often recommend a good game of poker for people involved in pricing, and particularly with negotiations and so forth, just to hone those skills. But sort of ask yourself, you know, am I dealing with a poker player, or is this a legitimate request for broader scope and so forth?
Okay, great. And Paul says, wants to know, John, if you've got any insights into how the most effective customer loyalty programs work long-term for retailers, given that they are in effect part of pricing strategy.
Yes, they are. I guess there's a couple of things there. Probably one of the most critical things is to make the rewards obtainable. So there's actually a really interesting case study done on 2 car washes in Los Angeles, which sort of had your typical cafe, buy 10 get 1 free, but people got their car washed more frequently at a car wash that gave away that clipped the first 2 car washes. So make it easy for people to get on your loyalty ladder and to obtain their rewards, and to redeem them how they want. So things like part payment and not necessarily cash, goods and things like that. Give them the customers what they want. And I was also thinking another thing, but it's slipped my mind. But there are some good rules, and if it was Peter wants to contact me, I can send him through some more details on that.
Okay, great. We've got a question, which is an interesting one, I think, that does sort of crop up quite a bit at the moment with the rise of online shopping and customers accessing overseas shops online. So Joe says, if an online retailer in the US is selling one of the same designers as my website, do you think my consumers here will expect my price to be equal, even though shipping will cost them more? Will a perception be it costs less on another side, even though in reality it will cost more?
That's a good question too. I actually wrote about this a couple of weeks ago on Leading Company, where this Christmas is going to be really interesting for Australian retailers, bricks and mortar and online, and those overseas retailers that a lot of people are buying from. And between now and Christmas, I actually likened this period between now and Christmas to the advanced purchase period before a flight taking off. So retailers now have got is where they actually want to be competitive on price with those overseas retailers and so forth. But as Christmas gets closer and closer, their ability to deliver product to you before Christmas gets smaller and smaller. And if you think back to last Christmas, there was a whole lot of horror stories about Christmas presents not arriving on time. And in fact, one of my son's Christmas presents didn't arrive on time because it was coming from an overseas website. I think you've got, there's a whole lot of factors to play on here. Play on the fact that you're a reputable website and you're not a dodgy website. Actually think about yielding your prices up a little bit as you get closer to Christmas. I think that the delivery question is an interesting one, but I think that the market is starting to settle around an expectation of generally delivery should be free, or it's built into your price, but people will pay more for faster delivery and so forth. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is I think that the second half of January and early February is going to be so quiet for retailers next year. Have a think about how you can get them back into your stores in that period once once Christmas is out of the way, and it'd probably be a bit the same for online retailers as well.
Okay, great. And I think this is going to have to be the final question. So I've got one from Chris Chan, but I'll perhaps have a chat to Jon about, because we do have some quite more interesting questions. So we'll have a chat about how we do with them. But the final one for now from Chris. When you have 200,000 products with a small pricing team, there's no way we can price all of our items well. We often go down the cost plus path because it's easy. Any suggestions on what we should do?
Absolutely. So most people know companies segment their customers. Can I suggest you actually segment your products? So you will leave a lot of money on the table if you just price 200,000 SKUs on a cost-plus method. Have a think about segmenting your products. There's two companies that do this. Burger King do this and Zara do it. And if Zara are doing it, they're sort of the gold standard in sort of pricing at the moment, so they can't be doing too badly. But put your products into different product segments, just like you would with customers, and devise pricing strategies for those product segments. You will never see Burger King in the US in a price war with their Whopper and McDonald's Big Mac, because the Whopper is not in the rules around their customer segment, their product segment for Whoppers, is that they will not fight a price war with a Whopper. So that's the really simple answer to that question. Segment your products.
Okay, great. That's really helpful, and that is interesting because now I think about it, I haven't seen the Whopper discounted. But okay, so there's a few more questions there, Jon. I know on the next slide that we're moving on to some contact details for you. Would you be happy for people to get in touch via Twitter or email with those extra questions?
Absolutely. If they can get their questions in 140 characters, I'll have a I'll have a look at Twitter later on today, and there's email addresses there as well. And if I'm inundated, please give me a bit of time to respond. But I do tend to respond to every email eventually.
Wow, you're impressive then, Jon. You do better than me. All right. Well, I think that's been just really helpful for everyone. We've had a few questions throughout the seminar of people saying, there's too much information, it's going too quickly for me taking my notes. Don't worry. Everyone will be emailed a link to the webinar recording and a copy of the slides. And
I do 3-day workshops in pricing, and I still don't get through it all.
Exactly. There's a lot of valuable information there, and you can also post questions using the hashtag BVPricing. So that's hashtag BVPricing on Twitter. Okay. So thanks very much again to our partners for today's webinar who've made such a great opportunity possible, Business Victoria, and obviously thank you to Jon for his generosity with his time and sharing his knowledge about pricing with us. And finally, to all of you participating, thanks for lots of great questions, for making it a really interactive session. And it's certainly, I think there's a lot in there we've touched on everything from Sliding Doors, the movie, to people with poker faces, negotiating pricing. So thanks very much, Jon, and thanks everyone.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.